but it's going to come back and haunt us again. They're going to try a second, a third, a fourth, and even a fifth time if necessary through this particular avenue. What happened is that the Conference of the State, an attempt to try and overthrow the Constitution before the Oklahoma bombing, went to all 50 states of the Union just about simultaneously within less than a 2-week period. It was a steamroller and moving very, very quickly. Most people had no idea that it even existed. Amazingly enough, we were able to catch them in motion and utilizing both our shortwave assets, the fax networks, and conventional telephone communications. Patriots linked all over the nation and stopped the Conference of the States butt cold in its tracks. During the Sam Donaldson interview that you saw, though, knowing full well that there was no coverage of this event 2 months before Oklahoma, I mentioned it no less than 9 times during the interview. If you have that interview on tape, or if you'd like to see a copy of it, we can access it for you. And you will note that in no way, shape, or form was Conference of the States allowed to be mentioned anywhere. However, in the same breath, through our intelligence report program and other work that was being done, we mentioned Conference of the States on live programming everywhere across the nation. What was the end result? Well, sometime in June, 4 to 5 months after the defeat of the Conference of the States, both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times were forced to actually write about the issue. Why did it take 4 to 6 months? Well, because between the internet, videotapes, and live interviews and live actions taking place with other programs, they could no longer hide the facts, and we were able to demonstrate this as an example of their actions in motion. Were we satisfied with the results? Well, things did go well for us, but again, not because we were reactionary, but because we responded to the situation and we were fluid with regard to how we operated during that period. I will state this, that had the New World Order had its way, we would not be sitting here today talking to you. Not only that, but this nation would have been an entirely alien creature to what you perceive America to be. In fact, it would have been America with a K. The Night of the Long Knives, or Reichstag fire, as it was going to be developed into, did not develop because many people saw through the facade. Well, that's where we're challenging you now. There is much work to be done, and it is obvious that the press will be at the forefront of the next propaganda wave, which is coming up very soon, by the way. We are seeing the first inklings of this across the nation, and I might note that you will see a series of pieces done both in the public press and through private mediaries in different agencies and organizations to create another groundswell. You may have noticed a couple of actions in the last couple of weeks or months in your local papers that seemed as if they were trying to stir something up. One of the reasons that they failed is because we held many of the press their feet to the fire, and they were not able to effectively use the same momentum and avalanche effect to get people to report on people reporting on people reporting on people that they did in the past. Now, can we expect more examples of Bill Clinton's and Janet Reno's family values in motion? Most assuredly. And as we've demonstrated with the portable detention camps, by the way, did we mention detention camps? Well, we probably should follow up on that. The detention camps that were discussed in American Peril and also in A Call to Arms are now being publicly discussed in your regional press, as most of you know that are listening right now. FEMA performed a series of special exercises along the Mexican border, admitting that sometime in the not-too-distant future, we are going to see a crisis evolve in the Mexican nation that will force part of their population north. And lo and behold, they declared particular areas to be FEMA detention control facilities. This is not an accident, and in fact, again, they did not want the information released until it was usable and the population had been properly engineered. Now, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, the Hegelian principle of create a problem, demonstrate a problem, and then come up with a solution that people otherwise would not accept is exactly what we are seeing in America today. I might also remind you, though, that again, because we were not reactionary but responsive, we also have many guidelines that have helped to put a damper on this particular formula. And we've actually thrown askew much of what was attempted in the last 6 to 8 months. Consider this, first of all. Through direct communications, not relying upon second or third parties to get the job done, ladies and gentlemen, our numbers have quintupled, sextupled, and in some cases are virtually immeasurable. One of the other reasons, and I will use an analogy that a friend of ours used that was quite appropriate, that the logic of the New World Order was to, of course, chased down that little fiddler crab that they were talking about called the New World, or called the militia. And, of course, scurrying across the beach with their stick in hand, they chased them into a hole and, of course, immediately stuck the stick into the ground trying to get rid of the little fiddler crab or force him out. Unfortunately, about the time of Oklahoma, when they fabricated this situation and they stuck the stick in, the whole beach moved. And that is a cold fact that has to be accepted by the other side, and a warming fact for us because, again, as I said, we're still here for a reason. The whole beach moved. Many, many people are out there who are quiet patriots, are still doing much of the work that needs to be done, but they're doing it the way we asked. If you find a measure, a place where you feel comfortable, and go to that point and then excel beyond it. Find a limit and then exceed it. Go beyond that point. Sit down tonight with your families, your fellow patriots, with your friends. Come up with a plan, stick to it, accomplish it, make it a goal. I don't care if it's homeschooling, if you're talking about getting involved in township government, land patents, common law, the militia itself, which, by the way, I will remind you, all of you are part of. At this point in time, we need to create a multiple number of fronts that our enemy simply cannot deal with, and we can already see elements of their system burgeoned and overloading. In fact, what this will force our aggressor to do is violate his own guidelines and rules that he has doctored at this point. We've discussed the War Powers Act. We've discussed all of these other options and all of the legislation that has been put into place. There are men and women who have made this their life's research. They have done tremendous work and should be commended for it. But remember, too, that the battlefield is changing. We have to still continually, and in an ongoing process, educate as many as we can. We're trying not to leave anyone behind. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be people that are virtually ignorant right up until the point where the storm is upon us. But I might remind you that, as brought forward earlier, we have to be as adept, of course, as Christians are with the Bible, as Americans with the Constitution as our guideline, as our tool. We have to have that tool in hand. We have to be able to know how to use it properly, and we have to understand that it was written not in a time that was ignorant of the possibility of the future, just the reverse. The Founding Fathers were an inspiration, and in fact, even for myself, and I'm probably the best example of, I think, many of you that are sitting there, many years ago, I did not have the foggiest idea of much of what was the actual history of our nation. I could tell you more about what was going on in Europe, and basically I could extrapolate, interpret, and of course even pronounce many of the names, the histories, and the backgrounds of nations overseas better than I could our own states. And I would say that even today that's still the case to a certain extent, because there is so much more that intentionally the New World Order crowd failed to teach us about our own country. It's what's missing right now in America that we're going to have to bring back. Or I should say more appropriately, we must step into the future to find. For there was a little example of something that I demonstrated here in American Peril, the wheel of history as it spins. And we are moving forward. Unfortunately, we're moving through the cycle to what is a very dangerous phase. For us, what we need to do is get the treadmill to work a little faster, and we need to achieve our freedom, break the chains of slavery and bondage, and move on into the future to what is obviously not a foregone conclusion, but an absolute necessity in order for the rest of the world to be as free as we are. We cannot do it through oppression and tyranny, or through the United Nations, or through the Clintonistas, or the George Bushes doing it covertly. We need to do it at our level, at the personal level, at the individual level. That's the only way that we are going to succeed. Now, it's fascinating to me that most people, of course, utilizing this concept that, we only have a 3-month memory span, seem to forget that were it not for the Patriot movement, there would have been no Waco hearings. Were it not for the Patriot movement dragging it up in the face of the American people and showing people and demonstrating to them the facts, there would have been no Ruby Ridge hearings. And the only reason that you finally saw them on Communist News Network and on C-SPAN is because of myself, many men and women that are out there working now, and you, who put the pressure on these people, and the issue was forced. But I might remind you of something. That was a point of history, 2, 3, and 4 years old. In that time, our enemy, forcing us to, in some ways, have to concentrate on these events of the past, has continued to move into the future themselves. So while certainly these